Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with the British land in Madagascar. We are now on to the last moments of the aircraft carrier Lexington. May 8th, 1942. Battle of the Coral Sea. On May 8th, while U.S. aircraft were still in action against the Japanese fleet in the Coral Sea, the enemy launched a counterattack and scored several hits with bombs and torpedoes on the 33,000-ton U.S. aircraft Lexington. Several hours after the battle, while steaming at 20 knots, the Lexington was rocked by a terrific internal explosion, probably caused by the ignition of gasoline vapors from leaks in the gasoline lines. As the flames grew, the captain ordered the crew to abandon ship. 92% of the ship's company were rescued and reached port safely. The last man off the ship was her commanding officer, Captain Sherman, and as he slid down a line into the water, a torpedo in the warhead exploded. Warhead locker, exploded. And the Lexington soon sank afterwards. The pictures show the crew abandoning ship shortly after the explosion. A U.S. destroyer, which had come alongside to render assistance, can be seen through the smoke. They say that, but I'm not sure where. Because I don't think that's it, but yeah. Can be seen through the smoke, which envelops the carrier's superstructure. The U.S. attacks on Salamaua and Lae, and the Battle of the Coral Sea, besides foiling the enemy's invasion plans, cost him the aircraft carrier Ryokaku, 3 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, 2 destroyers, and several transport sunk. A cruiser and a destroyer probably sunk, and damage to a second aircraft carrier, the Soyokaku, which was hit on May 8th and left alone. American losses were the Lexington, the destroyer Sims, and the 25,000-ton tanker Neosho. Interesting. Russian winter advance. December 1941 to May 1942. Russian counterattack. After the failure of the German attempt to capture Moscow, the Russian armies took the offensive all along the front and drove the enemy back. And oh boy, I just lost my place completely. Like my brain just completely shut off there. I am so sorry. I took the offensive all along the front and drove the enemy back over a large part of the ground he had overrun. The Germans, however, succeeded in holding most of the important railheads and clinging in their positions around Leningrad, which, despite furious attacks, the Russians failed to relieve. The map shows the territory, shaded dark, recaptured by the Russian offensive at an enormous cost to the No Germans. So here we see these are the old lines of the Germans. And yeah, the darkened shaded part here is all of the land that was recaptured by the Soviets. And as you can see, there is Stalino. Right there. Which I haven't really talked about in this book very much. If that at all. But, interesting. But yeah, and then there's Leningrad. And yeah, you can see the darkened part is the retaken, but that's just the Russian lines anyway. Leningrad was kind of stuck doing circle. But yeah, they have that supply line across Lake Ladoga, Ladoga. But once that freezes, or once that unfreezes, that supply line is going to be a waterway, which is going to be a lot harder to necessarily keep going more efficiently. Germans launch offensive in the Crimea, May 8th to 16th, 1942. Start of the German Spring Offensive. On May 8th, German and Romanian forces under General von Manstein, I think it's how you're supposed to pronounce it, launched a limited local offensive in the Crimea, with the objective of clearing that area of Russian troops and safeguarding their right flank against any possible Russian attack. In face of very strong pressure, the Soviet forces slowly withdrew, inflicting heavy casualties on the enemy as they retreated. On the 15th, the enemy penetrated the suburbs of Kerch, and on the following day, they claimed to have captured the town. The pictures show above Russian tanks followed by infantry advancing through enemy shell fire during a counterattack in the Crimea. You can see, I believe that's a T-34. It kind of looks like it, with barrel profile and things like that, but it could be a KV-1. Not sure. Kind of looks like KV-1 because of that back there, but who's to say? But yeah, you can see the explosives, the explosive bursts and the Soviets moving up. And then below, Russian troops firing at advancing Germans. So here, we see all of them. They're all piled up, and this is actually gives me the idea that these are all T-34s, because they had the bars for basically people to sit on the tank. That was the idea. But yeah, here we can see I'm using the tanks as probably mounted guns, and then also defensible positions. I mean, they really are. Good defensible positions that only artillery or another tank could really dislodge easily. Just making sure. Yep, that is the next page. Heavy fighting in the Crimea and around Kharkov. May 13th to 17th, 1942. Russian army strike first. In order to forestall a probable German attack, Marshal Timoshenko on May 13th launched an offensive on a 50-mile front stretching from Chugoyev to Volchansk, and quickly made deep penetrations into German defensive positions covering Kharkov. By the 15th, Russian forces had crossed the Donets and had advanced 10 miles west of the river. On the 17th, in an effort to envelop Kharkov from north and south, the Russians broadened their front, which now stretched for 100 miles, from Belograd to Smiev. And particularly heavy tank battles raged around the latter place, where giant Russian and American tanks scored notable success against the enemy. Between May 12th and 16th, Russian forces liberated 300 inhabited localities and advances varying from 12 to 38 miles. Besides killing about 12,000 enemy troops, the pictures show left, German machine gunners in action against the Russians. So you see, and I keep saying Russians. I'm trying to break it, but it's the Soviets. I should say the Soviets, because they're not always just Russians fighting in this. They're Soviets. But yeah, here we can see the German machine gun positions. And they go all the way out to this guy right here, I believe, but there could be more. And then on the right here, a German sentry outside a factory in Kharkov that has been fired by Soviet artillery. There we see this German soldier, and there's another one back there. And he's got his normal attire. That gun looks a little outdated there, buddy. But not really. But, yeah, he looks like he's ready for anybody that could come and attack him. Germans attack the Donets Basin, May 19th to 29th, 1942. German counteroffensive. In order to hold up the Russian drive towards Kharkov, von Bock on May 19th launched a strong counteroffensive in the Izum, Barenskovo area, where he struck hard at the Donets River crossing. As a result, he succeeded in halting the Soviet push farther north, and on the 29th, Berlin announced that the Kharkov battle had ended with Kharkov still in German hands. Meanwhile, on the 23rd, the Soviets had obliged to evacuate the Kerch Peninsula, and the German right flank was now secure against attack from the rear. The pictures show above a street in a Russian village destroyed by the advancing Germans. Here we can see the town. Yeah, this village is basically rubble now. There's not much left besides the things on the ground and the supports of the buildings. And then below, German tank and motorcycle reinforcements rushing up to the front line to take part in their new drive. Yeah, so we see they're all getting ready to go up and prepare for this engagement, trying to dislodge and take over the old positions that they had. Anglo-Soviet 20-year pact signed in London, May 26, 1942. Two allies affixed their signatures. On May 21st, V.M. Molotov arrived in London to sign a 20-year treaty of alliance with Great Britain and the Soviet Union. The signatories undertook to give each other military and the other assistance against the Axis and agreed not to conclude a separate peace with the enemy. They also agreed to collaborate with one another and with other United Nations in the peace settlement and during the ensuing period of reconstruction on the basis of the principles set out by the Atlantic Charter. The pictures show, the picture above, so this one right here, shows Anthony Eden watched by Prime Minister Churchill putting his signature to the treaty. While on his right, Mr. Molotov and Ambassador Maisky signed for the Soviet. So, right, if we find Winston Churchill, there he is. And then there's the Anthony Eden. On his right, we have Mr. Molotov. And then right here on his right is Ambassador Maisky, who was signing for the Soviets. Interesting picture. I don't really see this kind of stuff very often, but it's nice to know. And yeah, this treaty is very important because the no separate pieces means that Germany can't really, if they wanted to, weasel their way out of getting destroyed, basically. They couldn't be like, oh, Soviets, we're so sorry. Here, you can take all of our land in Poland and all that, and then we'll just fight the rest of the allies. And while I think Germany would still lose, it would take a lot longer. They'd have more ability to set up defenses more defenses on the Atlantic Wall. And then right here, the bottom picture is the powerful Russian bombing plane that brought Mr. Molotov to England. You can see. Yeah, this is a big plane. Obviously, they used a big plane like this, more fuel, so he actually can get to England. Which is most important. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Tell me what I could improve on. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It's really helping out the channel. Thank you.